Welcome back to our second live stream,
Yeah, yeah,
Clash
yeah.
of Cultures, episode 9. College football is coming to an end. Unfortunately, it's my favorite time of the year. But what in a month from now will be the national championship game, and we'll have to wait another 7 months after that just to get more college football. But today we're going to talk about Caleb Williams winning the Heisman. We're going to talk briefly about people declaring for drafts and opting out of bowl games. That is crazy. I'm going to
Yeah.
post a comment in a second.
You're
But
gonna post in the comment.
yeah, Alex says something crazy. I'm just going to post it.
Oh,
Preston is a cameraman for his wife's YouTube channel. That's crazy.
okay. I mean, if it pay the bills, it pay the bill. I
Hey,
ain't knocking it, Preston. I remember
but
because I remember his girl, like she's big, like
yeah.
on Instagram or whatever. So man, listen, don't let him clown you, man. Get your money.
But yeah, we're going to talk about Caleb Williams. We're going to talk about the transfer portal. We'll talk about at the end of the year now the biggest surprises and biggest disappointments of the college
Absolutely.
football season. And like I said, players declaring for the draft. So just to kind of kick things off, we'll start with Caleb Williams. Do you think that he deserved to win the Heisman?
You know, when you look at it from purely a numbers standpoint, he had the best numbers out of all the Heisman candidates. Over 4,000 yards, 37 touchdowns. So if you look at it purely from just the numbers, right? Obviously, I wanted CJ to win it. If I had to go by who meant the most to their team, I respect Max coming in second, right? And I thought he was going to be the person that takes it. It's kind of weird because Caleb was one of four quarterbacks there, and the only one with his team not in the playoffs that was there, and he's the one who wins the Heisman. But if you base it off numbers, I think you got to give it to Caleb.
Yeah, I think he earned it, man. Although his team finished what 11-2,
Yeah,
right?
11-2.
11-2. They're going to the Rose Bowl, or not the Rose Bowl, the Cotton Bowl against
Yeah,
Tulane.
yeah,
I think he deserved it. He had the most quote unquote Heisman moments to me. Although C.J. Stroud, Max Dugan, and Stetson Bennett, who I believe shouldn't have even been up there, that's bogus to me. How he was even in the breath of being in the
yeah. I
Heisman.
mean, so
I get
he's
his
there
team was
because
good, but
he's the starting quarterback for the undisputed number one team.
yeah,
So that's really why he was there.
yeah, I don't agree with it. I think
No,
there was a numerous of other guys who deserved to be there that didn't get the invite. I mean, we can go down the line, which we're probably going
yeah,
to do later on this show. But I think the award went to the right person. I mean, I wasn't
yeah,
of I'm still. I mean, I said from the jump I didn't think USC was going to make the playoffs. But as far as what he meant to the team, all the hype surrounding him. I think it was well deserved. And like I said, I'm not a Caleb Williams fan. I'm not a USC fan, but I think it was well deserved as far as the stats he put up. Just the magician like plays he was making towards the last end of the stretch of games that they had and trying to fight towards a playoff spot. Obviously, they didn't get there, but I think he earned it.
yeah. And I mean, I think you still got to give them props for even in their two losses, right? So I think the knock on Stroud is especially in that second half against Michigan. He looked bad. That's when he had two interceptions. But even in the two losses, USC had both of them obviously to Utah. Caleb Williams went for over 300 in both of those games, over 350 really. Total, he had 8 touchdowns, 1 interception in their two losses. So USC's problem wasn't Caleb Williams; it was the defense and tackling, as we talked about last week. So I think you still got to give him credit for even how he looked in those losses. He really kind of kept USC in those games when, like I said, that the defense looked pretty porous. And I think everybody else, but I also say the same thing about Max Dugan in that Kansas State game. Man, he was playing his ass off. He was really out there, the heart and soul of that team, and the only reason that game was close. So that's why I really kind of thought it was down to those two players, and CJ kind of moved to the side because in what we talked about, and I think we've talked about this for 5, 6, 7 weeks. CJ's Heisman moment would have been that Michigan game, and he kind of buckled, like I said, especially in that second half.
So, Alex asked in the comment section, do you guys think he will get it again next year? I think as of right now, he's the overwhelming favorite. Just how Bryce Young was the overwhelming favorite coming into this year. But I mean, you saw Bryce Young didn't perform. I'm not gonna say not up to
Yeah,
his standards because just the team wasn't that good. But I think he's the favorite heading into next year for
I,
sure.
I'm going to go the opposite, and I'm going to say he's not the favorite. Let's just be honest. no quarterback has won, or no player has won it twice since Archie Griffin, right back in the 70s. I think Heisman voters want to give the award to new people every year. So Caleb is going to have to blow people away. The numbers can't be close next year for him to win it. Is it possible? Yes. Caleb Williams obviously has that potential, but I don't think he's the favorite. I don't know who is, but if you ask me Caleb Williams versus the field, I'm going to take the field. And like I said, not because I don't think he's going to have another great season, not because I don't think he's going to put up the numbers, but I think Heisman voters just don't vote for the same person twice. We can look at Tebow, we can look at Manziel, we can look at a number of players that put up great numbers the next season that didn't win it again because Heisman voters don't want somebody to win it twice.
Yeah, no, I can see that definitely. I'm just trying to think of. I mean, we're probably going to get a situation with like Hendon Hooker where somebody comes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
But I mean, if I'm just looking at college football right now, most of the top heavy guys who were in that race for the Heisman are not going to be here next year.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, we can kind of talk about it. I think you're probably looking at I think Donovan Edwards is back. I don't think Blake Corum is going to come back. Donovan Edwards, I think, for Michigan, who's had two amazing games with Blake Corum out. And again, obviously, it's hard for a running back to get it. Drake May, obviously from USC.
oh
I
yeah,
mean, I'm sorry,
he's a good one. He's a good one.
UNC. His name is in there. You got your boy Cade, right? I think he got enough little press as we ended the year. An Alabama player, whether it be a quarterback, whether it be a running back, is always going to get press. The Ohio State quarterback, whoever wins that quarterback job, is always going to get press. There's a number of players that I think, but if I just had to name names, I would say off the top of my head, just what we've seen this year, you're probably talking Caleb, Drake, Cade, and Donovan. Those are probably my favorites just by name. Like I said, I think I'll throw whoever the Alabama quarterback's in there. I'll throw whoever the Ohio State quarterback's name in there as well.
For sure. But moving on. So congrats to like I said, congrats to Caleb Williams. He definitely earned it, in my opinion. I think he was the most deserving of all the guys that were up there.
Yeah.
I don't think Stetson Bennett shouldn't have been up there, but I mean that's another topic that we'll go over later in the show, like I said. But moving on to the next topic. We got the transfer portal. So I just kind of want to briefly talk about my perspective on it. I've been having conversations with a few of my high school friends and stuff like that via DM on Instagram or Facebook or whatever the case may be, in person even. Where I stand with the transfer portal, I am 50-50 on it. The only reason why I feel like I'm 50-50, like I said, we spoke about this on previous episodes, but I think my biggest gripe with the transfer portal is it's gonna turn into the NFL and like free agency. And it's not even like the reason why I love college football so much is it's not people trying to chase a bag and go load up a specific team. Like for example, uh, DJ Uyangalele, he went to
Yeah.
Clemson. He's leaving Clemson a millionaire. Like he's
Yeah.
literally leaving as a millionaire because of NIL, which is cool. Like I'm happy for him and his family. But what I don't want is 5 years down the road, Clemson, Alabama, Ohio State, Texas, USC, all these higher teams are just throwing money at players and they're getting all they like at that point the players lose drive to even try to make it to the next level. They're just, well, I'm gonna go to Alabama because I can get 2 million a year. Who cares if I sit on the bench? Like I'm set.
Yeah.
And then they lose the drive that once got them there.
But I don't think first. So in the NIL, let's remember that not everybody's getting money. Now there's some people getting some serious money thrown at them. But I don't think let's just take Milrow on Alabama. Now, do I think he probably has some NIL deals? I'm sure. I don't think he's getting big money. I think he does know though, as the starting quarterback at Alabama, if he just kind of waits out Bryce Young, that he's probably talking about some millions. And we'll come back to that. But in terms of the transfer portal. I was a fan of it. But this offseason, I'm not going to say turned me off, but at least gave me a little bit of a sour taste. 3,000 players,
it's ridiculous.
Over 3,000 players have entered the transfer portal. We are now talking free agency. I used to like when commitment meant something. I think transfer portal, and again, my basic rules are, if you have a head coach or a major coordinator that leaves, you should be able to leave for free. No questions, whatever. If none of those things exist, I think they need to go back to the 1 year penalty, because right now it is basically free agency. Kids are not sticking it out. They're going to, especially at this time where we have to talk about NIL too, right? A lot of these kids, let's just say I do have a great year at a mid-major or a smaller school. Now we could take Jordan Addison, right? He had a great year at Pitt. And then he understood that USC was a bigger brand, which probably brought him more NIL money than if he would have stayed at Pitt. No other reason for him to had left Pitt, except for the opportunity for more NIL money existed at USC. So I think when you kind of mix those two, when you mix that NIL is a big thing now, and then the transfer portal is now basically free agency. And like I said, if it's a situation where, hey, I've been there 2-3 years, I haven't beat out somebody, I'm looking for playing time, yeah, I understand. If my coach left, yeah, I understand. But if it's just, hey, at the time when I got my scholarship, Pitt was the only, and I'm just going to use Pitt. Pitt was the only team that offered me, but now I can go get NIL money somewhere else. I don't agree with that.
Yeah. So Alex asks, pretty lengthy paragraph in the comment section, but he asks, where he says, I don't know all the rules, but isn't there a limit on how often you can transfer? Also, I think the bigger schools paying the recruits was always a concern. What kind of solutions do you guys have for this? Maybe college football should have some type of union like the NFL.
Yeah. So with COVID, so it used to be a 1 year penalty for any transfers. With COVID, NCAA has given every player, and I think this is now stamped into existence, but they're giving every player basically one free transfer. So no penalty on one transfer. But like I said, that has made college football really like free agency, right? They talked to Mac Brown in dealing with Drake May, right? We just talked about Drake May, a Heisman candidate probably next year. And Mac Brown was talking on behalf of Drake May, talking about the number of teams that have reached out to him, or the number of NIL opportunities that have reached out to him if he moved to a bigger program, right? Again, when we mix NIL with the ability to transfer for free, we're going to have a lot of this. A lot of the players at smaller schools that had great years are going to have big time programs reaching out to them saying, hey, we'll give you $1 million if you come here.
Yeah. And that's why, to me, it's kind of ridiculous. And I wish it wasn't a thing. There should be some sort of stipulation on, like you said, like a coach that was recruiting you decides to leave. Then like that's understandable.
Right.
I don't think it should just be, like you said, a free agency. It turns me off of college football. Like the whole reason why I watch college football is because you got guys coming in competing for a job, trying to make it to the NFL. At this point, it's I'm going to go to Clemson, and after 1 or 2 years, if I don't start, then I'm just going to go transfer to Virginia Tech and be the guy over there. And they might pay me $200K to be the guy there because I'm going to be the face of their team because I couldn't do it here. And I just don't like it. Again, it's good for those players who may not be able to make it to the next level. Like, and I understand that. But when you're talking about a guy like Jordan Addison, we'll just keep using him as an example. A guy like him, he won the Biletnikoff Award. He was already producing at Pitt. So it's not like him going to USC boosted his draft stock another 20 picks. He's still the same player he was at Pitt. He's still getting exposure at Pitt because he was labeled as the #1 receiver in the country while he played for Pitt. So him going to USC, yeah, he might have had an opportunity to get to the playoff, which eventually didn't happen. I get that. But to me, it was a money move. That's all it was. It was a money move. Yeah, it might have helped his draft stock a little bit because he played with the Heisman quarterback. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's necessary or it's good for college football if it's just going to be hopping around nonstop, trying to basically chase a bag. That's the way I see it. It's just people are just chasing a bag.
Yeah, and I was looking, before we jumped on the air. So Texas A&M, I think it's 20. I messaged you right before. 23 players in the transfer portal. That's so I think you have 80 scholarships. So you're at over or about 1/3 of your team is leaving for the portal, right? And we talk about Texas A&M, and again, I think they used NIL to get some of these recruits. So, they kind of are reaping what they sow. But 23, 24 player turnover in one season, and that doesn't even include all the seniors that are graduating. 23 players entered the transfer portal for Texas A&M. Like, how do you how do you have a team, right? Because college football is really about building. It's about learning. It's about, it is about the story of that guy in his third year who finally has the opportunity to start. We're not seeing that anymore. We're not going to see that anymore because people are
And
going to
it's
leave after the freshman year.
and it's crazy that you bring up Texas A&M because I think out of every school in the country, minus Colorado, because they're kind of we're going to talk about them a little bit, but
Yeah,
they're kind
yeah,
of
yeah.
a little bit different, as well as Jackson State. But Texas A&M, I feel like not only did they lose a bunch of guys in the transfer portal, they lost a bunch of guys in the draft, a bunch of guys who are
Yeah.
graduating, but they had so many decommitments because of how bad they were
Yes.
this year. A lot of
Yes.
decommitments, and I want to know like how. I know they came out with some sort of storyline and some sort of article or headline that Jimbo Fisher's job was never on the line. I want to know, is his job on the line, or what? Where do they go? Because they're going to be bad next year. They're playing in the best conference in college football. You
Yeah.
lost pretty much all your top decommitments. I know they just got another running back who committed their
Yeah.
this year.
The kid that was committed to Louisville.
Yeah, so I
Yeah,
know he
yeah,
was
yeah.
the number one running back. I don't know if he's going this offseason or if it's next year though. I don't know if
No,
it's
I think
2023
he's
or
coming.
2024.
I'm pretty sure he's coming this year. Hold on. I'm gonna
Okay,
tell you.
but yeah, like I just think that team is going to be so bad. I don't know if Jimbo is really. I mean, if his job is solid or even on the hot seat because they're going to be bad again. Alex says, yeah, honestly, situations like Quinn Ewers piss me off. It has high school kids chasing the bag instead of the best situation for them to grow as a player as men. But I feel
Yeah.
like that's different
Yeah.
though because
No, no, no.
he wasn't
Because
about to play.
Quinn Edwards is in the same situation. First, you went to Ohio State knowing that CJ Stroud was the starting quarterback. It wasn't like, oh shit, this is a shock. He was the starting quarterback going in. You went as a freshman, you basically sat. Let's just be honest, Texas probably threw. I mean, I think he's one of the biggest NIL earners in his season with Texas, but he went to Ohio State on a $1.1 million deal in the NIL. And then you leave Ohio State when you knew really this would have been your opportunity to compete with Kyle McCord for the starting job at Ohio State. But instead of that, you go to Texas, right? Which, if that's the case, why didn't you just go to Texas to begin with?
Yeah, no, I see that. And just to kind of go back to the Colorado thing, I want to know your opinion on this. This isn't a topic for the show, but just like a little tangent we can go off.
Yeah.
Me and Christian had this conversation.
Okay.
Christian basically said like he's going to support Colorado. He's not a fan of them, but he's going to support them. And we kind of went back and forth about it. And I asked him, what is Colorado's ceiling with Deion Sanders signing a 5-year deal? Not to say he won't get extended, but Colorado signed him for a 5-year, $25 million deal, something like that. They went 1-11 last year.
They
So
did.
I want to know your opinion. What do you think their ceiling is in the Pac-12 with Deion Sanders as your head coach?
Are you talking about next year or over
I'm
5
talking
years?
about for let's say he doesn't get extended because I mean we don't know what's going to happen. But
Yeah.
let's say
So
over the next 5 years, what is their ceiling, record wise
so
or whatever?
honestly, and I'm going to say I don't think they have a great year next year. Right, and I already see people, and I think he's going to get a bunch of players, a bunch of transfers. He's going to get a bunch of at the end of 5 years, right? So we're talking about now. Deion fully has his team in, right? Guys he's recruited. I believe they can be national championship contenders only because Deion is such
Ah,
a
good.
big. Oh, well, I'm explaining. Think about it. Deion was able to recruit at a high level at Jackson State with no budget. Colorado is going to give him. I am sure Deion, before he went in, said, "Hey, listen, I will only come, but I need a recruiting budget of whatever XYZ." Right? Deion Sanders is the biggest name in college football right now.
Correct.
Right? I mean, let me take. Let me move back.
Well, no, that's not a
Because
terrible statement though. That's not a
there's
terrible
Nick
statement.
Saban and but
Yeah,
he's this is a guy that most of these kids either heard about coming up, their parents know about. Deion coming in any house, that's a name. And you have a lot of kids that are we see in the interviews and the motivational speeches he did at Jackson State. That's on TikTok, that's on Facebook. He has a great promotion team. He's going to get Colorado's name is already out there, right? You have kids right now dang near begging to go to Colorado. You have the running back from Alabama, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, saying, "Hey, do you have room for me?" There's a 5-star kid that didn't play at Alabama his freshman year, basically begging to go to Colorado. He's going to get in recruits. He did it. He got the number one recruit at Jackson State. So he's going to get in recruits. I'm just, if you ask me his ceiling, now, do I think he reaches it? That's I think we're probably a year or two from really seeing that. But do I think that's his ceiling 5 years from now? Can I see Deion Sanders and Colorado being the a top 5 recruiting school? Yes, absolutely. And if he's able to do that, if he's able to continue to bring in kids, especially remember this, the Pac-12 is about to get decimated. They're losing really their two biggest programs. So you really, in the future, you're looking at competing against Washington and Utah as the only two real good Pac-12 teams. Yeah, I think they could be a national championship contender in 5 years. I don't think it's going to happen soon. I don't think it's going to happen overnight. But 5 years from now, I can see them as a national championship contender. But I will say, I don't think he stays 5 years.
So I'm going to go the other way with this. The reason being, I get that he brought good recruits to Jackson State. But the way I told Christian was this. We don't know how good of a coach Deion Sanders is. At the end of the day, we don't know how good of a football coach is. He was a great player. He's a Hall of Famer, best DB of all time. Okay. But at the end of the day, is he a good coach? Can he call plays? Can he situational football? That's
I mean, the man has. It's not like he hasn't coached. It was the swag.
I get that. But so this is also what I told Christian. So he went to Jackson State, and he got a couple 5, I think 2 5-stars or 1 5-star, whatever, some 3 stars, some transfer 3 stars, 4 stars. The talent that he had on his team was far superior than the talent he was playing against. So at the end of the day, yes, he had to coach. But when you're looking at, even if USC, UCLA leaving, you still got to play University of Washington, who's going to get 5 stars and 4 stars. You're still going to play Oregon. You're still going to play a team like Stanford, who obviously is on the downfall right now, but they're still a good team. I think when you look at, can Deion Sanders out-coach another team that has 5 stars and 4 stars? I don't know if he can do that.
Well, but you're saying, I think the out-coach part only happens in a few games, right? I think 90% of college football games, it's about, let me say, I think you can put me as the head coach of, and let's just say, I'm going to take Ohio State. I could go be the head coach of Ohio State, and we're going to win 10 games. Right now, I think there are some games that it comes down to coaching. But if I just have better players than you, then I'm going to win.
Yeah, so if you look at, when is USC and UCLA supposed to leave? In 2 years or 1 year or 3 years?
I think not next year, but the year after.
Okay, so I mean, so they went 1-11 this season. What do you think the record could be next year? Because I'm gonna tell you mine.
I think you're looking at probably a 5-win team.
Okay, I would say 4 or 5 win team.
Yeah.
The reason being, they play a lot of good teams next year. And I don't know what their out of conference schedule looks like years from now, but I know that they play TCU in week 1 next year. They're going to get blown out. I don't think
I mean, again, I'm not. But that's why I asked you. That's why my question was, are you talking about next year? I think there's high expectations for next year, but I don't think they're good next year. I don't think you can turn around a team in a year. I don't care who he gets from the transfer portal. Right. I don't, because there's still things like chemistry. There's still things like actually instilling some sort of mantra. Right. There are things that you build over time. That's not, I can go get all the players out of the transfer portal, but I'm not going to be able to recoup all of that. As much as we talk about what Lincoln Riley was able to do at USC still kept a lot of those players. They had a lot of players that returned, right? Yep, Caleb Williams came, and Jordan Addison and Mario Williams, but a lot of players from USC were the same players from last year, so they had some chemistry. I think he's a 4 or 5 win team next year.
I don't know. Even if we're talking about 5 years down the road from now, I don't know if, and I told Christian this. Those of you who watch the top 25 offensive players, but he's a Florida State guy, which in turn he likes Deion Sanders, obviously. But he basically said he thinks the same as you, like they could be a national championship team. And it's not so much, how can I put this? It's not so much the talent he's gonna get, because I know he's gonna get good talent. I just, as of right now, I don't believe in him as a coach, because I mean we're saying like for example, like you said, a lot of games doesn't come down to that because you simply have better players. But when you're talking about competing for a national championship, you're competing against teams who have as good players as you. I mean, if you anybody in the top 15, top 14 realm of teams, obviously other than like the Alabamas, the Georgias, Ohio State, are pretty much grouped together. I mean, if you look at Utah, Oregon, if you look at LSU, um, Michigan, Penn State, like all those teams are very comparable. But I think their coaches are a better coach than Deion Sanders. And it's hard to say that. I mean, I told Christian this. I don't think he's a bad coach, but I can't say he's a good coach either. Because what he
Well,
says, like, go ahead.
well, and part of this we don't know, right?
Exactly. That's what I
This
was getting
is,
ready to say.
but we got to understand that Deion Sanders is not like he's some guy off the street. He's been around football his whole life. He's seen coaching. He was a high level NFL player who's played with some great coaches. So he's seen what good coaching looks like. Now, can he replicate that? That is something different. The other part is you got to remember too. A big piece of this is what does the staff look like that he puts around him, right? What is the offensive coordinator? It doesn't all just fall on Deion Sanders. And yeah, Alex said it there. It doesn't all just fall on Deion Sanders' shoulders. Deion Sanders has to go get a staff that understands football at this level. And I think he's already starting to do that. He's had a couple of hires already. I think he's starting to put a staff together that understands college football.
So I'll be the first to say I don't hate him or anything like that.
It sounds like you hate him.
No, I don't hate him, but I'm also like I'm not going to be overly and ignorantly optimistic just because he's a great football player. At the end of the day, Steve Nash was a great basketball player. He's a terrible coach. And he had Go ahead.
But this is the thing. When you say ceiling, right? Ceiling is what's the highest somebody can reach. It doesn't necessarily mean they're going to reach it, right? If you said so there's two different things. If you ask me where I think he is, that's a different story than what I think his ceiling is. I think his ceiling, again, he's shown, and we could talk about maybe he was just more talented than everybody else, but he coaching football. He did it in high school. He was a high school football coach. So he's won at every level that he's coached so far.
Preston, that's a crazy take. That is a crazy take. Dude had Durant and Kyrie Irving. I'm not even. Anyways, I'm gonna take that off. That's crazy.
But so the ceiling to me is a championship contending team. Does that mean that he reaches that? Who knows? There's 8,000 variables that's going to happen between now and 5 years from now.
I think it would be cool if they did get to that point. He said the team was horrible though. Anyways, Durant is the best player on the planet during that time 3 years ago. By the way, 3 years ago, not right now, but I would say 3 years ago. But like I said, I wouldn't be mad it happened. I think it would be cool a cool storyline. If he did turn Colorado around and even to compete for the Pac-12, I think that would be awesome. But again, until I physically see it, until I see him take down the likes of Oregon, UCLA, USC, or have like really good competitive games with them, like, and he's coaching well, and like then I'll be like, okay, like I believe in it. But right now I can't just be optimistic and be like, yeah, he's about to come in there, he's gonna turn him around. Like I have to see it to believe it. I can't just go off of a whim and say he's gonna do it, because at the end of the day, this is not FCS, this is not Jackson State. You're playing against teams that have Caleb Williams, a Heisman player. Like, what are you gonna do against Caleb Williams? He'll play him next year, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and like I said, I don't think it's going to be pretty next year. It's not going to be pretty next year.
No, I get that, but but even then, you got Malachi Nelson going to USC. So when you're playing against those guys in 3 or 4 years, I just want to see how he handles them. But moving on, that was a long transfer portal thing that we kind of went on tangent, but that's cool. Moving on though, this is a big topic. This is a big topic. Opting out of bowl games. We briefly talked about bowl games a little while ago, but this is a big deal for me just because, like I said, bowl season is like the pinnacle of college football every year. And really, this has made me want the 12-team playoff so much more because they're going to have less of this. But so many players are sitting out with probably more to come in the next couple of days or weeks. But as we said in our last show or the show before that, whenever we did talking about our bowl games, and I said I thought that the number one game to me was going to be that UNC Oregon game. You got the number one receiver for North Carolina saying he's not going to play now, which sucks, and Josh Downs. And I mean, he killed Clemson. He had like 10 catches. He's such a good receiver, and he declared for the draft. So it sucks that
Yep.
he's not going to play. I don't know any off the top. Oh, Jackson Smith and Jigma not going to play. So I mean,
Right.
I know he was kind of hurt,
Now
but
let me yeah, Jackson Smith and Jigba, and I know a bunch of Ohio State fans kind of went at him as well. Jackson Smith and Jigba went to attempt to get medical clearance. He was not cleared and was told he would not be cleared. So therefore, he said, "Okay, I'm going to declare."
yeah,
So it wasn't he wanted to play.
it's just kind of lame. I mean, let's see. I'm going to see if I can find a list of players
Yeah,
that
I have
opted
a
out.
list up. I have a
Of
list
players
up
that
of
opted out.
players that are opting out.
I know
Now,
Will Levis did.
Michael Meyer, the tight end from Notre Dame. I'm gonna
Big
just try to
name.
give you some of the big names. Yeah. Well,
Will Levis.
Will Levis. Yeah. So it also has transfer portal. Joey Porter, the cornerback from Penn State.
Let's see. NFL draft.
Cam
I
Smith.
has
The
Go ahead. Oh,
Go ahead. Go.
Jason Hasselwood from Arkansas. Um, or
Yeah.
Jaden. I think his name is Jaden, but he's opting out of the game.
Eric Gray from Oklahoma.
Let's see. There was a
Now,
bunch of them.
now,
Two
now,
Oklahoma linemen.
now, I go two ways with this, right? I remember, and if you don't remember where this kind of all started from, you remember the Jalen Smith play against
Yes.
Ohio State,
Yes.
where again Jalen Smith at that time was at least considered a top 10 linebacker. Ends up, I think, breaking his leg. Looked really nasty, and in a bowl game that meant nothing. Right? It wasn't the national championship. Um, and end up breaking his leg, dropped down to what the third, fourth round. I don't remember off the top of my head. Dropped in the draft and hasn't been the same since. So he was late second round pick, and hasn't been the same since. So if you feel like it becomes a school pride thing, right? But if I'm in a bowl game, I know I'm going to the NFL. I know my stock is pretty secure. Do I play a game that, let's just be honest, probably doesn't mean much? I'm not playing for a national championship. Do I risk getting injured in a game that, like I said, doesn't mean much? I don't know.
Yeah.
That's it.
And I mean, like I said, I just feel like I don't know if it's just because I'm younger. I mean, on the younger side, and like obviously you watch more college football than me, but I feel like this wasn't really a thing like 10 years ago. Like I feel like
So I think
people
it
weren't
all
just like,
started after that Jalen Smith, after the Jalen Smith thing.
okay, yeah,
And now it's become pretty normal, right?
yeah, it happens
We,
every year.
we talk
Someone,
about Olave didn't play last year. Garrett Wilson didn't play last year for Ohio State. I mean, now it's pretty, if you're not, and I think this is to your point, right? Hopefully, in the 12-game playoff where teams do have a shot for a
they're
national
not going to
championship,
sit out now.
we see less of that. But yeah, it's now pretty normal that if I am a prospect with a good shot of getting drafted and my team's not in the actual national championship playoff, then I sit out.
Yeah,
Anthony
definitely.
Richardson is sitting out.
Yeah, oh yeah, he sat out as well. Cam Smith, the corner out of South Carolina, I think
Yeah,
he's the number one corner in the draft, the mock drafts. I think I could be wrong, but he's sitting out as
yeah,
well as the guy from Penn State too. The Penn State corner
yes.
sitting out as well.
That's why I say Joey Porter. Yeah.
Yeah. But moving on to kind of talk about people who are declaring, is there any like notable names that you are looking at or think that's interesting that declared for the draft?
So off the top of my head, obviously Jackson Smith and Jigba. And my concern for him is just simply we haven't really seen him this year. So we're kind of basing this off of what he was last year, which again, he was amazing last year, and what we think he can be. So obviously he's a name. Joey Porter, right? I think we already mentioned some of the people. Josh Downs, we've talked about. Ronnie Hickman, the safety for Ohio State. I'm just kind of going through names as I'm looking. We talked about Michael Meyer, probably the top tight end. I don't think there's been, and again, there's still time for people to put their name in the list. The only person that I'm really shocked at is Anthony Richardson. I don't think he has measurables, he has size. He is a major project, and I don't think he's higher than maybe a fourth or fifth round draft pick.
Yeah, I don't think he's that good either. Um, he's like a poor man's Jalen Hurts to me. That's the way I look at him. But
I don't
I
even.
think
I don't know if he's that. Jalen Hurts put up big numbers in college,
I
right?
mean their
If
play
you
style. I just mean their
yeah,
play
yeah,
style.
okay.
Yeah, I just mean their play style. Just a big quarterback who could run a little bit. But they actually have him as a higher rated quarterback. I didn't know if you knew that, but
Yeah, so because and I'm sure this is based off measurables, right? But I've watched this guy play. Yes, he has great measurables. He's big. Uh he has the ability to move in the pocket, but I don't think he's a great thrower of the football. And at the end of the day, when you see the maturation of Jalen Hurts, who's having a great season this year, right? Jalen Hurts obviously can hurt you on the outside, but Jalen Hurts right now, and I just seen this stat on the TV when they were playing the Giants today, is dominating also from in the pocket. Anthony Richardson cannot dominate from in the pocket. I think these numbers are based off of his, he's 6'4", 230, something like that. But I don't think it's about his ability as a quarterback. I don't see him doing well in the NFL.
yeah. So I'm looking at WalterFootball.com. I don't know how credible this source is. Sorry.
Yeah.
But they got him at as a fifth ranked quarterback. Only four guys ahead of him. I don't even know how that's possible.
Yeah.
Because I don't think he's good at all. I think DJ's better than him, and DJ's not even good. So
Yeah, and
that's
I would say DJ is
yeah.
better than him.
But just to name a few of the guys who are coming out, let me pull it back up because I had lost it. 1 second. So you had a few. These are a few of the underclassmen who declared. You had Jaden Hasselwood from Oklahoma. I mean, I'm sorry, he transferred from Oklahoma. He's at Arkansas now. Drew Sanders. You have Isaiah Foskey, defensive end from Notre Dame. Michael
Yeah,
Mayer, Jackson
yeah.
Smith, Joey Porter, Cam Smith, Tanner McKee, quarterback out of Stanford, who's ranked one spot higher than the guy we just talking about, Anthony Richardson.
Anthony Richardson. Yeah.
And I mean that's pretty much it. I'm assuming Josh Downs. I don't know how old he is though. But I know we just talked about him. But I'm sure a few more guys are going to declare.
Yeah.
And I think I mean just by kind of looking at who's in the draft this year, I think there's going to be a weaker draft.
I think
I
so
don't.
too.
Yeah, I don't think this draft is very heavy at all towards a specific position. Maybe defensive line, and edge
I mean,
rusher.
yeah, and I was going to say edge rusher.
I mean, you have Will Anderson. You
Yes.
got Jalen Carter from Georgia. You had Tyler Davis and Brian Brzee from Clemson. I don't know if Brzee's coming out. I know Tyler Davis is. You got Miles Murphy from Clemson. So you do have some guys that are coming out. But I don't see the big names other than the quarterbacks. Other than that, I mean, everybody else is
And
pretty
really,
much
to me,
average to me.
because you're talking about, even if you're talking about quarterbacks, I think you're talking about three, right? You're talking about Bryce, CJ, and Will Levis. And Will Levis, I think, is still, you're kind of banking on some potential, right? Will Levis, I don't think, put up great numbers at Kentucky. So you're banking on some potential. And you look at the Kentucky situation and just say, hey, maybe he didn't have great skill players there around him. But yeah, I am not super impressed. I think as you kind of get out of the top 10, I think it's a crapshoot.
Yeah. All right. Well, moving on. I was actually excited to talk about the biggest surprises. We did this earlier. We did it like in like week 4, week 5, then we did it again in week 9 or 10ish around there. But to end out the year, um, yo, what is going on out there? I don't know what's going on, man. It sounds like a damn circus in my hallway. Um,
Oh,
that's why I keep looking over there. But
I'm like, what is going on? Are you
yeah,
good?
because I keep somebody better break in a SWAT team. But so my number one, I wouldn't even. They're not even really ranked to me. But my one of my biggest surprises is Tulane.
Okay.
I think the reason why we always get that group of 5 team that kind of comes up out of nowhere. You had Cincinnati, you had UCF, and you have Tulane. But I don't know how much. I mean, you got Cincinnati who have guys like Travis Kelsey, Desmond Ritter, who's in the NFL now, and I mean, you got Sauce Gardner. So they've always had like guys who kind of went up. Same thing with UCF. You had Blake Bortles, you had Latavius Murray, you had yo,
Are you
golly, boy.
good? You all
I don't
right?
know what's going on. You had Latavius Murray. And so I think with Tulane, I can't name one player who's ever played at Tulane. So I mean, can you? I can't.
No, I was, as you said that, I was just kind of thinking,
Yeah, that I
can
can't
I
name a
name
player that
somebody?
came from Tulane. So they were a surprise for me. But I think they get blasted by USC. I mean, we're going to talk about that in a couple episodes, but we'll just have to see. But they're a big surprise for me.
All right, so my number one surprise is Tennessee. We've been talking about the resurgence in Tennessee. I think we thought coming out of last year that Hendon Hooker would be good, but I don't think many people would have had Tennessee as a top 10 team. They were not ranked to begin this season. So the fact that they were able to pull off a 10-win season with a big win against Alabama, not at Alabama, but against Alabama, I give them credit. One of the great stories, Hendon Hooker and those receivers all year, that offense. Obviously, they laid an egg against South Carolina. But beyond that, and again, I don't think most people knocked them for the Georgia loss, especially at Georgia. But a story all season. I think if you tell the story of this season, Tennessee has to be a part of that. So they're one of my surprises.
Okay, and then my second surprise is going to be Corum and Hendon Hooker being snubbed from the Heisman.
Okay.
Um,
Oh, that's why you say you want to talk about it later.
um, Stetson Bennett should not have been there. Um, Not only that, I mean, I think Corum and Hooker both deserve to go. Definitely Hendon Hooker. I
Yeah.
get that he got hurt, but he carried that team. And I do think that he should have been there. And to be honest, he should have been there over CJ Stroud as well. That's just my personal opinion. Um,
No,
I think
I think you're taking it too far now.
I think Hendon Hooker had a great season.
He did.
Corum had a great season. I think both of them deserve to be over Bennett. So if anything, it should have been five guys there. If they could have done that, it should have been Stroud, Williams, Dugan or Duggan, however you say his name, Corum, and then Hooker. That's who I think should have been there. But I think that's a big surprise for me is neither of them getting an invite to New York. That was bogus to me.
So my second surprise, and especially when you consider the week one performance, is really Bo Nix and his resurgence at Oregon. I think Bo Nix came in went to Auburn as a very high recruit, but just never seemed to pan out at Auburn. Never had over 16 touchdowns. But he was able to put up numbers, like I said, especially if we exclude that Georgia game. We're talking about a guy who threw for over 3,000 yards, 27 touchdowns, also ran for another 500 yards and 14 touchdowns. So he kind of put himself on the fringe or at least in the conversation of Heisman. Again, I don't think he was there, but I think there were some weeks where at least we were talking about him. And I think going into this season, especially after that Georgia week, we were talking about this being a recruiting bust. So yeah, I have him as my second surprise.
Okay, that's actually a good one. I didn't even think about that, but that's definitely a good one. Third, my third biggest surprise is TCU. Feel like they got to be on this list. Unranked all the way up until week 6 was the first time they became ranked. Um, Nobody really even had them on their radar coming into this year. They weren't a favorite for the Big 12. They weren't. I don't even think they were a top team coming into the season in the Big 12. And to think they're a Final Four team, they have the lowest shot of winning it all. I think that's safe to say. But I mean, just the fact that they're in it is a good storyline. Like I said, that last week, this is who I'm rooting for. I want TCU to win. There's no ties towards that, and I don't have to hear anybody say anything if they win at all. But I think that's my biggest surprise is going from unranked to a Final Four spot with the quarterback that I never heard of before coming into this year. So that's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. So my last one is Michael Penix Jr., the quarterback from Washington. Came from Indiana, again, another transfer into the Pac 12 that just put up ridiculous numbers 4,300 plus yards passing, 29 touchdowns, looked amazing in some games. That really just seemed to work. And he had never been anywhere close, had never even thrown for 2,000 yards in a season. He went over 4,000 yards this season. He was a name. He had a decent season at Indiana about 2 or 3 years ago. Just seemed to have a bunch of injuries and just a bunch of stuff going on. But man, it's really worked with him at Washington. He'll be back next season. And I know we didn't mention him earlier, but
He
he's
could be a
probably somebody
Heisman.
that we need to
Yeah.
talk about as a potential Heisman as well. So yeah, that's my last surprise, big surprise of this season.
Alrighty, and then Moving on to the last part of this week's live show, episode 9 is going to be biggest disappointment. So, what was your first biggest disappointment?
My first one has to be the Miami Hurricanes. So they started out the season ranked 16. We were talking about Tyler Van Dyke as a Heisman candidate. So Tyler Van Dyke ended with less than 2,000 yards, 10 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. They went 5-7, and again with Mario Cristobal, we thought that this was about to be the turnaround of Miami, the resurgence of Miami, and a losing season in the ACC. They did not. They looked horrible at times, especially when you throw in a Middle Tennessee State loss this year. I don't know what's going on in Miami, but it's not looking good. And this is one of my big disappointments.
Okay, so I have 3 disappointments on here.
Okay.
This first one should be
I
number
think
one on
I think you're
every
gonna steal one of mine. Go ahead.
is everyone's has to be on everyone's. We talked about this earlier. It's Texas
Yeah.
A&M.
Yeah, that's
Yo,
my next one.
this team went 5-7 after not only having one of the top recruiting classes last year, but the top recruiting class before that, and the top recruiting class before that, and you're 2-6 in your conference. You lose to Appalachian State. I mean, if you just go down, no, I'm sorry. So they beat Sam Houston 31-0 in week 1.
Yeah.
You lose to Appalachian State. You beat Miami by 8, who you just labeled as a disappointment. You beat Arkansas by 2, lose to Mississippi State by 20.
Well, yeah. The list after that is what, 6, 7 in a row, I think.
Like you lost to Auburn, you lost to Florida, you lost to Ole Miss, you lost to South Carolina. It's so bad to me how a coach with so much potential um can go 5-7 and 2-6 in your conference. So it's not even like you went 8-4 and you lost 2 games in your conference. You went 2-6 in your conference. That
Yeah.
is you're in the bottom of your division in your conference, and you had
Yeah.
arguably the best recruiting class in the country.
Yeah, I don't know why Jimbo's not on the hot seat. The only thing I guess I understand is Texas A&M gave him that big contract. The buyout is ridiculous. So that's the only reason I guess that Jimbo Fisher is not on the hot seat, because I understand it when it's a situation where, hey, I don't have the talent. But Texas A&M should have the talent. So I don't know why they started the season ranked number 6. So yeah, I don't understand why they're not considered, or Jimbo's not considered on the hot seat, especially going. Now I understand maybe give them one more year, but like we already talked about, right? They
How?
lost. They're probably going to lose something like 30 players. I don't see them doing good next year. I think he'll probably be fired by the end of next year.
I could see that as well. But moving on, or no, you do your second point. That was my first.
Well,
So
well, well, my so I'm going to go to
was that one of yours?
yes, it is one of
Okay.
mine, but I'm going to go to somebody that we talked about earlier, that Jordan Addison. He moved on from Pitt, had 100 catches, 1,600 yards at Pitt, won the Biletnikoff, and this year he had 59 catches for a little over 800 yards. Played in every game, with the Heisman winner, and just didn't put up the numbers that, again, I think we expected. Now, obviously, he just got to USC, late. Maybe there was some chemistry issues, but he didn't have the season that I think any of us would expect it coming off of that Pitt season. And maybe, we kind of talked about this. Obviously, USC gets a little bit more attention than Pitt. Maybe this hurt his draft stock, right? Maybe we talked about maybe this helped it, but maybe it hurt it. Now, obviously, he still has another year there, so he has time. But I think, given what we thought of him last year, where he just looked unstoppable and amazing at Pitt, he didn't necessarily look that at all times at USC.
Yeah, I could see that as well. It's hard to say though because he did play with some really good talent too. So the ball was spread out a little bit, but I mean numbers wise, he definitely went down. My second one, which the only reason why I'm doing this is because I was very high on this team, like coming into it, and I feel like it's the more cliche answer, but it's Alabama. Um,
Mm.
the reason why I think that they are a big disappointment is because you had the reigning Heisman winner. Not only did you have the reigning Heisman winner, you had the best defensive player in the country. You have the best coach in the country, and your team is just you probably have overall the best team in the country, but you just didn't really produce up to the standards that were set by your program, same way Clemson did last year. So it's
Correct.
not like I'm not playing both sides of the fence. It's the same thing. And everybody said Clemson was a disappointment last year. Everyone said that because we went what 11-2 or 10-3, whatever
Yep.
we went. Alabama's going to finish that same record, so we have to stand on that same logic because Alabama has a higher standard than Clemson does if you're talking about winning. And if Clemson
Uh,
had a quote unquote down year and fell off, you have to say the same thing for Alabama. Not only did I get they won 10 games so far, they have a chance to win 11 games, but the games you did win, a lot of them were last second games, one possession games. That's not the same Alabama that we've come to know and see. It's I mean you're winning by 30 points a game, but now you're only winning by a 2-point conversion or a last second field goal or a 4-point uh, or 3-point stop at the goal line, whatever the case may be. It's not the same Alabama team that
it wasn't as
we've
dominant.
come to
Yeah.
see. Yeah, so I think they're a disappointment. Even though again, 10-2 is not a bad. I said this last year. 10-2 is not a bad year. That's a good problem to have if you go 10-2.
Yeah. For
And
for a lot of teams, that's an amazing season.
exactly, but I still think it's a disappointment for Alabama standards. So that's why I put them on this list.
So speaking of Alabama, this is where my third one is going to come from. Not the team, but Jermaine Burton. If you remember, this was the big name transfer from Georgia, right? We talk about Jamison Williams leaving, Mitchie left. So we really thought, and I'm sure he thought leaving Georgia, this was his time to be wide receiver number one. He was going to, just like Jamison when he left Ohio State, he was going to increase his draft stock. He was about to go to Alabama and be the man. 37 catches, barely over 500 yards, just didn't look like that wide receiver number one. We went into the season talking about Jermaine Burton really being the breakout, right? And now you left Georgia to go to Alabama. And again, this isn't a knock, but this is, Georgia's playing for or potentially playing for a national championship. Obviously, Alabama's not. I think he's a disappointment this season. The only other team or only other place, and I don't know if you have them, I had was Oklahoma, but I give them a pass because of what they lost and a new staff coming in and things of that nature.
So just to piggyback off of your last one, Eli Ricks was another disappointment. The transfer
Yeah,
from
yeah,
LSU,
from
number
LSU.
one corner, barely played at all. He played a little bit towards the end of the year, but he's a disappointment as well because he was some hot commodity coming out of the transfer portal
He was
and
supposed to be
didn't
the
do
number
anything.
one
He
corner.
did nothing for them.
Yeah.
So that's that. But my third to end the show, my disappointment to end this show
DJ.
is Dabo Sweeney's lack of decision to bench to bench DJ against South
Wait a minute,
Carolina.
wait a minute,
No,
wait a
no,
minute.
no, you're
You
not
know
listening.
what?
You're not listening. You're not listening. Go away. Actually, I'm gonna let you say what you're gonna say just so I can prove you wrong. So go ahead. I want to hear what you're gonna say.
On this show,
Yes,
after what game was it that K came in and they won?
that was the Syracuse game.
After the Syracuse game,
Correct.
you even called for DJ to be the starting quarterback for Clemson.
So and that the Syracuse game was in week 8. We
Yeah, yeah,
lost.
yeah.
We lost to Notre Dame, and I stood on DJ being the starter.
Right.
But when I was just getting ready to say my biggest disappointment is Dabo, and you decided to and cut me off, you
Go
didn't let
ahead.
me finish my statement. My biggest disappointment as a Clemson fan was Dabo not putting Cade in the game during the South Carolina game. That was my biggest disappointment. The reason being, DJ had 90 yards passing or whatever, didn't pass the ball down the field. 7 out of his 9 completions were at the line of scrimmage, so he didn't throw the ball down the field at all. And if you look at just the difference of the Clemson offense in the South Carolina game compared to the offense against North Carolina, it was a big difference. I firmly believe if Cade played even the second half of the South Carolina game, we'll just say the second half, I think we're in the playoff right now. Personally, that's what I think. Because we were number 8 when we lost to South Carolina. The week
Right.
after we lost, we bumped back to 10. So let's just say, go ahead,
So you're saying if Cade came in at halftime, you
in
guys
South
win the
Carolina,
game?
in the South Carolina game, because we were winning 26-14 at half, I believe.
Right.
So let's say he came in at half, because they did it in the North Carolina game. We weren't losing. They just brought him in in the third possession. So it's not like DJ was just riding the ship against South Carolina. We had a pick six against South Carolina. We had a fumble recovery. So the defense was really carrying us. It's not like DJ was driving on the field, scoring
Uh,
and stuff like that.
but again, to your own words, I asked you, and I didn't watch the game. I did
Mm-hmm.
not watch the Clemson, but you said you didn't think DJ played that bad.
I did say that. But again, that was before I saw what Cade did against
Okay.
North Carolina. So,
Okay.
mind you, I was getting a sample size of Cade playing load or game management type football against Syracuse. He didn't throw the ball one time. Actually, he did throw it one time, and he threw a Hail Mary for a defensive pass
Right.
interference
Right.
against Syracuse. So it's not like in the Syracuse game we saw him come in, shred their defense, and just go crazy. He played one possession in Notre Dame, threw a pick on his first pass attempt. So everybody was clamoring for Cade to come in, but at that point, we didn't really know his potential. At this, it was blind optimism. Just bring him in, see what can happen. We did that against North Carolina, and he proved himself. So after that North Carolina game, my thought process is if he could do that against North Carolina, I think he could have been good enough to get us that win against South Carolina. And if we would have won that game, then you're talking about a one-loss Ohio State, a one-loss Clemson, and who else lost?
I think at that point Clemson get TCU.
I think Clemson, and I think
Clemson gets in over Ohio State,
and that's my point.
Because you're also talking about the conference champion. Yeah,
that's why I'm saying this was a big disappointment for me because, like I said last week, we're gonna have my friend Scott on the show who used to play for Clemson. I talked to him for maybe an hour that day after the North Carolina game. He even said we wasted a valuable year. We had arguably the best defensive line in the country. We had Cade, who, if he would have started for the Notre Dame game, and even Dabo said at the ACC title game, we wanted Cade to take over the ship for the Notre Dame game. They wanted that, but they said that Cade wasn't ready. They said that he wasn't ready. They didn't think that he was ready, and Cade didn't think he was ready. So I'm glad they didn't do it because then it would have gave Clemson fans a bad taste in their mouth if Cade would have came out in the last 4 games and shit the bed and had 7 picks and 7 touchdowns and just looked bad. So although we're not playing in the playoff, I'm looking forward to the Tennessee game, looking forward to him getting a whole offseason. But I would say it's a disappointment that Dabo didn't pull the trigger and make him the start or make him the guy. I wouldn't even say the starter, the guy in that South Carolina game because I firmly believe if we win that game, we're in the playoffs right now. Do I think we win it all? No, but we're in the playoffs.
I think that the tough part there is just that there's parts of this that we don't know, right? I wonder how they looked in practice. And the other part is Dabo has been extremely loyal. We can talk the same thing with Kelly Bryant, right? When Trevor didn't take that job right away, although as the season progressed, we've seen that Trevor was obviously a much better quarterback than Kelly Bryant. But Dabo has held on to loyalty to players, especially his more senior players, the guys who kind of stick with the program, right? We can talk about Dabo and his one transfer that he's ever accepted was what's his name? Hunter Johnson.
Yeah, he actually started at Clemson.
The one kid that left it, came back from Clemson. So he's always had an extreme amount of loyalty. And yeah, maybe this time it kind of bit him in the ass.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, that's my biggest disappointment as a Clemson fan. Just because of like the thought process of what could have been. Now, I'm not too mad just because I think I'll put it this way. Let me ask you this. If Ohio State loses in the first round, right? They lose in the 1st round, hypothetically. What would make you more mad? Them lose, or how would you go into the offseason? If they lost in the first round, like to a game-winning field goal, whatever, they lost, or if you went and won the Orange Bowl. So that's why, to me, it's kind of like, yeah, we can't play for the college football playoff, but I'd rather be able to go into offseason with like, okay, we beat Tennessee. They were a good football team. We're getting a lot of our guys back. Then to make it to the playoff, it's kind of like just with the hope of, maybe and then we lose by 20 points because we're just not as good as the other teams.
Yeah, I think because I think for Clemson, it is about going into the offseason with positive momentum, right? I think it's about Cade hopefully having another good game. And then there's that level of optimism with, like you said, he gets a full offseason. The only concern, and I think this goes to what Scott was saying, is Clemson is going to lose or potentially could lose a lot of talent, especially on that defensive line.
A lot of them are leaving.
Even though Cade may come back, is that level of talent still going to be there next year, especially on a defense that kind of carried them at points, right? Maybe it needs to shift to the offense, but man, did you lose an opportunity?
So I mean, we're definitely going to lose Tyler Davis and Miles Murphy.
Right.
They should both be first round picks, so they're going to be gone. I don't know if Brzez's leaving. He may leave. But everybody else on the team, defensive wise, is coming back. We're returning all of our DBs. We're returning all of our linebackers. So really, it's going to be how good of the defensive line can uplift all the younger guys, which I think will be fine. Notoriously, we've had dominant defensive lines in the last 10 years or so, so I don't think
Yeah.
that's going to be an issue.
And they
But
recruit
it's
well
gonna it's gonna
across the
come down
league.
to Cade at the end of the day. Because as we saw this year, you had a quarterback who was not very confident. He wasn't the best of quarterbacks, and I mean he didn't have weapons around him. But you arguably had, like I said, the best defensive line in the country. So whether you have that or not, if you don't have a good quarterback or a viable quarterback, it's not going to matter. It's that's just how it is. So we'll
Yeah.
just have to see. But that was my biggest disappointment. Um, and I mean that's how the show's going to end, is Clemson being disappointing for me. But we will, in what, 20 days. Hopefully, we can get a win and get momentum going into the off season. But
Yeah.
that is. Do you have anything else for episode 9?
No, no, no. Thank y'all for rocking with us. For those of you who stayed online, obviously we love the live. We love to be able to interact. So we're gonna keep trying to do this. We'll keep bringing you content, right? Obviously, as college football kind of ends, and that's been the focal point of a lot of these early episodes. We'll shift that in, and Clash of Cultures wasn't just supposed to be a college football show. So and honestly, if you look, it's not even just supposed to be necessarily a sports show. So,
Sports.
we're going to try to dive into some other things, whether that be music, whether that be motivation, whether that be some pretty cool interviews and talking to some cool people. So yeah, stay tuned. We're just getting started. So stay with us, rock with us. If you have any ideas or suggestions, shoot them to us, because yeah, we want to build this thing and we want it to be, just kind of me. Obviously, a generation older than my son, and him, and just kind of getting a perspective from two different generations and you name the topic, and we'd love to talk about it.
Definitely. But that is going to do it for episode 9. 9 episodes down. We're 2 months in. It has
Yeah,
been
yeah,
super
yeah.
fun so far. Consistently growing, and like my dad said, we're going to be doing a lot of different stuff. I mean, college football is coming to an end, so the first 2 months obviously was college football heavy. We'll talk a little bit about the NFL and the NBA, but we're going to have our very first interview type video. I'm not even going to call it an interview because it's one of my closest friends. But just getting his perspective on being a Division 1 athlete, trying out for the Seattle Seahawks, the recruiting process, and just his outlook on. I mean, he coaches now high school football. I think I'm pretty sure they just made it to the state championship. I could be wrong. He'll correct me
Okay.
if that's wrong. But he's going to come on in 10 days from now. We haven't decided if it's going to be a live show or not. It'll probably be a pre-recorded show and posted to our YouTube channel, just because it might be a little bit lengthier than a live show, and we want to make sure everything is kind of smooth in our first one like that.
Yeah.
But look out for that. But until then, we will catch you guys next time on today's Sunday. We'll post another one on Wednesday, episode 10. So hopefully you guys stick around for that one. But until then, peace out, guys.